Welcome back to the balance sheet, everybody. I am Billy. This is my co-host Raj. Exciting week. We have to review for everyone. Pretty loaded SmackDown with a lot of women's segments. Some big matches on NXT. Backlash was last night, but biggest story of the week, I think, in these parts is us covering New Japan Resurgence. And for the first time in this podcast's history, we will be covering a singles match, or where she was a singles competitor that Mercedes Moné has lost and is no longer the New Japan Strong Women's Champion. So that's pretty big news. Three Belts Monet is the new moniker at this certain time. She even tweeted that her luggage is feeling pretty light. So I want to kick it to you. And you did watch the match, right? What did you think of the
I
match, and
did.
what do you think of Mercedes losing?
I did watch the match. I did not watch it live like everybody else. I watched it maybe an hour after it happened. I did order it, but I was traveling back to my house. When I watched it, I already knew the result, which was kind of disappointing. I should have muted certain words on my timeline. I thought it was an okay match. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was great. I just thought it was an okay three-way match. The ending came out of nowhere. That was surprising. They did some good stuff in there. I think if we're being honest, Azumi and Mercedes was kind of the hope we all had for the match, like going in when we found out Azumi was one of the contenders. And I think Mina, for all of her strengths, which is she's very charismatic, she has a great look to her. She clearly has fans. As a worker, is lesser than the other two. And I think in a three-way, as we found out in WrestleMania, you have to have all three folks at kind of the same level to make these things really cook. And I think that um I want to see an Azumi Mercedes match. Hopefully, we get that down the road. But
Yeah.
as it relates to how the match ended, I mean, clearly they felt like it was time to take the title off Mercedes, but they clearly wanted Mercedes protected. And the they, I believe, would have to be Tony, because I think Tony is her ultimate booking agent here. He's going to have to sign off on her taking a pin, and he did not want to do that. So Azumi pinned Mina in kind of a roll up fashion, and Mercedes, they pan over to her. She's like, "No, I lost my title," and then she pushed Mina and left the ring, blaming Mina for the loss. So clearly, they might be setting up a TBS title feud on AEW TV, as Mina is now in AEW. So my thoughts are that I understand why people are frustrated that they want to see Mercedes take the pin for her title to be gone. And I get that. But I also see the point of view of AEW is that they have a money match that we think is going to happen in Mercedes and Tony Storm. Tony's been hot this year. She's lost once. Mercedes hasn't lost in AEW in a singles match. So to set them up on that course, you got to keep both of them unbeaten, and you got to get to All in Texas with that being kind of the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. I just don't think you can afford to have Mercedes lose on a random NJPW show, which, let's be honest here, many people aren't going to be watching. So I agree with the booking if that it was the time to take the title off Mercedes. I personally don't think it was the time to take the title off of her. I believe that NJPW could have gotten a little bit more miles out of Mercedes as the champ, because I feel like a one-on-one match, like we have both talked about this privately, that there's going to be a time where Mercedes loses every belt, right?
Yep.
She might win the Tony Storm belt, which is the world title, then lose that belt, the TBS title, Rev Pro, and NJPW quickly, like loss after loss after loss after loss
Like
to
a
set
crash
her
out. Yeah, yeah.
like to set her back this way. If that's what's going to happen, I would have just kept the belt on her and let her lose in a singles match to an Azumi, to somebody else who it could have really cemented them as a star. Conspiracy theory out there is there have been rumblings in the wrestling circle for a long time that NJPW is going to be sold to WWE, and that Forbidden Door is going to possibly be the last partnership that they have with AEW, if at all it's AEW, because I don't think they've announced what Forbidden Door is yet, have they? Like who the companies are?
No, and if you look, there's the big show in Mexico. Forbidden Door is over in England, and that's actually what I was
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about in regards to Mercedes losing. They're I don't know that Forbidden Door geographically lends itself to an NJPW, centric event. Um, I think that you've got some other things that could happen there. But go ahead and finish your thought on them
Yeah,
being
yeah. My
purchased by
thought is that
WWE.
if long, in the wrestling community, people have known that uh, WWE has long been trying to get into the Japan market. They don't do well in Japan compared to Stardom or NJPW or even Noah. So, or now even Marigold. And Marigold, I know they have a little bit of a partnership with, but they tried to do NXT Japan. For a history lesson, Kairi Sane was one of the people in charge of NXT Japan. That did not work. So if they want to get into Japan, the easiest way to do it is to buy NJPW. NJPW has 50 years. Plus, the purchase of NJPW gets them the videotape library. The videotape library is very important because you can now tell the full Hulk Hogan story. You can now tell the full not Stan Hansen, AJ Styles, Finn Balor. If you ever bring back Mercedes Monet, you can tell her story with NJPW, EO, because you get Stardom. Kyrie, you get a lot of footage that you do not have right now to do your documentaries. So if they were to buy New Japan, then that also tells me why Mercedes would have to drop the title, because clearly, Tony Khan is not going to allow her to lose to a WWE owned entity. So I'm not saying that's what's happening, but for a long time, this has been out there. This is not a news story. So those are my thoughts. But I think as a match, I thought it was okay. Like I wasn't blown away by it, but I didn't think it was bad. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree on a lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts on this one. And I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, but I want to touch on some of the things you said, and then, uh, quality of the match. What's interesting is I watched Sakura Genesis to kind of hype myself up for this match. And when I went back and looked, um, Mercedes and Hazuki had more. They seemed like they hit it off right away better in that particular match than Mercedes and Azumi did, or Azumi, sorry. And that actually came to fruition because we got this all-time great match with Mercedes and Hazuki singles later. What I loved about and don't get me wrong, Azumi and Mercedes were very good in the Genesis match, but there was like a spark there with Hazuki. And then at Resurgence, Azumi and Mercedes clicked. If you go back and watch the match, their spots that were centric to each other were like very, very, very good. And I'm not dogging Mina, but I'm just saying I feel like they've clicked now where they have that chemistry where when we do get a singles match between those two, it's going to be very, very, very good. They were lockstep with each other. And a couple of the sequences I felt like were really, really good. For Mina, at the Tokyo Dome match, she was very serious. Like she felt the weight of that match and she really like locked in, and she was pretty brutal. If you remember, she tore at Mercedes' knee in that match. I wanted a little bit more from her in that regard in this match. You're fighting for a title against the best. And she was a little played to the cameras, and I get that that's her character, but I just didn't feel like it matched this current match. So that took me out of it a little bit when she was doing that. Regarding Mercedes dropping, here's why, as Tony, I am okay protecting her from being the one to lose. I'm totally fine with her getting pinned by Azumi. Azumi is the exact right next champion, but they just don't do a good job in New Japan promoting anyone to this relevance in the United States. And hear me out. I was ready for Mercedes to lose to Kanji at Rev Pro if she just would have lost, because Rev Pro spent all this time in marketing telling me, a non-Rev Pro fan, and the Rev Pro fans, how special Kanji is and how, she's the heart and soul of that company. I've never seen, unless I seek it out on my own, where is New Japan connecting me to how special Azumi is if I'm a casual? And so they've got to do a better job of building up these matches for these stars, and then that way when the torch is passed, obviously if you're a Stardom fan, you know how special Azumi is, but you're doing a show in Ontario, California, under the New Japan banner. They've just got to click better on their U.S. marketing, in my opinion, for ticket sales, for a lot of reasons. Where I will give them props, and props to Mercedes, Mina, and Azumi. They're the first women to main event over the men's IWGP Championship. It's very special. And I don't want the moment to go unnoticed. New Japan's been around for 50 years. Mercedes has main evented 3 times. No woman had ever main evented a New Japan show before that. But why this was special was those previous 3 times, the men's top title was not on those cards. And on this show, the highest men's belt in New Japan was on this card, and the women still main evented. So progress was absolutely made. I hope, to the casual New Japan fan, that's what helps put Azumi over as a star. And I hope that she gets to main event shows without Mercedes involved, because that belt deserves it. The lineage of that belt is incredible. Willow Nightingale, Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, Mercedes Moné, and now Azumi. So I think that's special. That's fantastic. The match was like 18 minutes. I did feel like the ending was a little abrupt, the way it was just laid out. I think it was supposed to feel frantic like that, though. And then the last thing I'll say is, the more I thought about it, I wasn't shocked that Mercedes dropped the belt, because I feel as though her summer makes that belt the least important on her list, from she's got to fly somewhere, be booked, and be present and have a great match with it. I just think that AEW has so many big shows lined up this summer. Rev Pro has an anniversary show lined up that I'm sure they want her to be on. Forbidden Door is in England, which lends itself to her working Rev Pro. She's already said she plans on working the Arena Mexico show. So she's already booked to be a lot of places around the world, and Japan is not one of them. And I think she wouldn't want to have a New Japan match as a throwaway. She's just going to fly there and not get to put her all into it. And so for many reasons, it makes sense that she's no longer the champion there. I think it'll be interesting. The belt collector thing usually goes, you get all the belts, you peak with belts, and then you lose them all. It would be unique to a belt collector story to not have her just start dropping belts now and actually have her win the pink belt, win the world title. I think there's a lot of important shows that she could lose the TBS championship in the middle if you want a TBS title shot on All In. I think this opens a lot of things that you could do for Mercedes this summer. So I think ultimately the results. It's going to end up being good for everyone. I think we'll look back and say this was exactly the right decision.
All right, so I have a couple different paths I want to take. Number one, let me start with the main eventing part. It is significant from the standpoint of it's never happened before with the men's top title on the show. But if we're being honest about it, it should have main evented the women, because most of the people who paid money to that show did not go for Zack Sabre Jr. or Goto. They
Right.
went to see Mercedes. Mercedes has been, even by a publication that has never given her the credit of being a draw, that she is the biggest New Japan draw in the United States.
Yeah.
Since she became part of that promotion with the Kyrie match, this publication has said that she is the reason that they have drawn houses in America on the shows she has been on. I have attended one of those shows in DC. So the Kyrie match, that building, that event is cursed for Mercedes, by the way. Isn't that the event she got injured on?
Resurgence, it is, yeah.
Oh, okay. So the Resurgence tournament, she was the draw.
Yep.
Then, she got injured, comes back, does the DC match that I went to. She was the draw. And this one. So his point is that it's not about the belt and who has it. It's about the draw. And she has been the draw in the United States. So to me, even though it is a significant milestone on paper, to me, it's like a common sense thing. Now, let me add to this. If because of this, it allows an Azumi to main event without Mercedes or whoever the next champion is, then progress has been made. But I felt like when I watched this is because of her, not because of progress, if that makes sense. Like, I think she's the reason. And once she's taken out of the mix, we go back to status quo. We go back to the men main eventing. And so that's more of a credit. That's a credit to her, but I'm glad that she was part of the history that it happened, because even though New Japan owns Stardom, New Japan has traditionally only been a men's promotion. And, they didn't even look at women's wrestling as a thing. Now, history lesson here. In the mid-90s, the reason is because All Japan, the rival New Japan promotion, had all the good women anyway. So New Japan was smart enough to be like, why do we even have a women's division? They got Toyota, they got Nakano, they got, Hokuto. So, like, that's part of this. But I'm happy that Mercedes, I think, of how many New Japan shows has she worked? 4?
So the Kyrie show,
yeah,
which she didn't main event because the men's belt was on it. She should have main evented that one. It was a return match, and that was a big gate that her and Kyrie were responsible for.
She didn't main event. That was the Okada one, right? And then she came back out with Okada.
Came back out.
Okay. That's the one where the publication I'm describing said she should have main evented because she's the reason that people actually paid to go to that show.
Yep. So yeah, Kyrie, Resurgence twice this year and 2 years ago. Momo and Hazuki.
And I could make the case that the show I saw is the one New Japan show she shouldn't have main evented, because Leo Rush, that was his home gym. Like, he is from that part of the country, and the crowd was super hot for him, but I'm glad I got to see her main event. So, okay, so let's get that stuff out of the way. Let's talk about the possibilities of what this opens up for her. So she drops this belt. I still would have liked to see her lose it in a singles down the road to really cement a star, but okay, cool. It's done. Now the trick is, what's the story with her? Is the story that her losing this belt because of somebody else forces her to now wrestle a style where she never leaves anything to chance? Because she is so afraid of losing another belt that she like becomes this vicious, nasty, cheat at all costs heel. Does it allow her to get a stable who helps her? Like, it's almost like if she beats Toni Storm, the story needs to be she's the head of the table and they protect her at all costs because she
Yeah.
lost this one belt and it kind of makes her more desperate. I think that she should win the Owen Hart, beat Toni Storm, and not lose for a while. But like she gets some, like when she loses, she starts losing to, as I've always said, set her back up to be a baby face. And how they do that is she comes to aid Harley Cameron at some point down the road, and that's how you turn her baby face. But I'm excited for the Forbidden Door stuff because, like you said, there's a Rev Pro tie-in, and hey, what better platform for Rev Pro than on Forbidden Door for her to lose the belt there, right? Like to lose the
Yeah.
Rev Pro title at Forbidden Door, that would be great.
Yeah. You actually just, there's a path here where everyone's happy, and hear me out. So this loss makes her lose it a little bit, and she comes in and she just brutalizes Jamie, which they already planted the seeds for, by the way, with the lower back.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes in and she brutalizes Jamie, and she wins the Owen. And I'm getting Bayley vibes from, remember how Bayley turned over a month? She um hit Becky with the chair
Mm-hmm.
instead of Sasha, but then she really didn't lose her mind until got the title back from lost to Charlotte, and then it was to get the title back, right? She lost her mind and the scissors and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
with the Bayley buddies, what if it's kind of like a want her to lose for a while if she becomes the champion, but she can't hold the TBS title hostage either. So there's a progression here where she snaps a little bit, beats Jamie. Then on one of these 4-hour shows in the summer, has a match for the TBS title. She's got her sights set on Toni and loses to like a Willow, a Mina, a Chris, whatever they set up, and she actually loses, right? And then your point goes full flip, and whatever that version of her comes out, and they build that up. And do you lose some heat on the Toni match if that happens? It depends on how they do it. I will say, losing, she threw out in the interview that she wants to main event All In, and she didn't say she wants to main event All In. She said she wants to main event All In Texas. And anyone who's a Mercedes fan, this woman speaks great things into existence. She's done it a lot of times in her career. And if she's doing it now, she's doing it for one of two reasons. She's either doing it to distract us from the fact that Jamie's going to beat her, and that's when the crash out comes. That's still possible.
Mm-hmm.
Make no mistake, if she beats Jamie, double or nothing, she is dead serious about main eventing All In. Dead serious. And with the writing that Toni Storm has been, the character work she's done, the writing that I believe it's RJ City has worked with her on to create her character and her stories mixed with big match potential with Mercedes and how iconic Mercedes is in big matches. I would not put it past the two of them with the writing, with good writing behind them, to create a feud that absolutely fits as the main event of All in Texas. I would not
What
put it
is
past them.
okay? So help me out here before I answer. Can they main event all in Texas? Which they can. What is the trajectory like? Is it Osprey versus Moxley? Is that where this is headed on the men's side?
Uh, Osprey or Hangman, right? So Hangman
Okay.
would be the AEW original fans' choice, and Texas kind of fits the whole thing. I don't know if Hangman's from Texas, but his gimmick certainly fits Texas. I've not heard
Yeah.
that he's from Texas in the same way I'm hearing like Athena's from Texas, so I'm not
I
sure.
don't think he's from Texas, but okay. So Tony has long look, there's a rumor out there that the reason Tony Storm and Mariah May didn't main event the pay-per-view in LA, where everybody thought they should have main evented, is
Yep.
because Mariah May said to Tony, I'm not resigning.
Right.
At that point, he's justified. At that point, he's
Yeah.
justified. You can't blame him for that because you're not going to main event. You're not going to let a woman main event your one of your biggest shows of the year to go to the other company. You've literally handed them even a bigger star. Okay.
Right.
Do I think Mariah May, oh, sorry, do I think Tony Storm and Mercedes can main event all in Texas? Absolutely. If Mercedes has to win, has to keep her belts, she cannot lose anymore. I know you can do it screwy ways, crash out. No, no. It has to be she is the immovable, the irresistible force against the immovable object. Like that has to be the story, which is you have the two worlds colliding. You have this dominant world champion in Tony Storm, and you have this dominant next champion, and it's like who's the better champion? Who's the bigger icon? Like going back to my childhood, my first ever WrestleMania I attended was WrestleMania 6 in my hometown of Toronto. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. Now, I'm older. I kind of realize this is not exactly, Brett Shawn in terms of wrestling quality here. But the story they told was who's the better champion. And it
Yeah.
drew 67,000 people. If you do Mercedes and Tony that way, yes, because now you have these two just colossal forces meeting for the first time. And that's the other thing they have as an advantage is a first time match. On AEW TV, they have never even touched. The reason that I think Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair worked as the main event at WrestleMania 37 is it was a legitimate dream match. These two never had a singles match. The internet has wanted the match for years and they got it and it was the main event. I think Tony and Mercedes can main event, should main event if they tell the story correctly. Mercedes cannot lose. She cannot lose anymore. Tony cannot lose. They both have to just be on this collision course. And then when they main event, they have to be given a lot of time to tell their story. And then at that point, how I would do it personally is Mercedes wins the belt and the music hits. And that music is Dakota Kai. And she is Mercedes' first challenger for one of the titles. Because to me, if you're going to let Tony Storm lose, you have to set up something else right away that makes people forget Tony Storm lost. Because I'm going to tell you this, and I know Mercedes is going to be ready for it because she is one of the best heels of all time. But her beating Tony Storm for that crowd, she's going to have tremendous heat because nobody wants to see Tony Storm lose to Mercedes in AEW lore. I'm not talking about us who are bigger Mercedes fans than timeless Tony Storm fans, but AEW, she's their person. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I would
No,
do it.
so it's delicate, right? And I'm gonna speak for what I see a lot of women's wrestling fans out there saying. I get your point. I actually think you're right. I mean, The reason why it wasn't a problem for Ultimate Warrior to not defend the Intercontinental title on WrestleMania 6 is because men's matches weren't lacking because of it, right? The worry is if Mercedes is TBS champion, that's one less women's match on the card. So I think if Tony, and I'm not saying that Tony has this level of awareness, I worry that he wouldn't. The women's main event would be worth jumping through some hoops. I think if you had a really, really good, well done eliminator match that made the all in card and the winner faces Mercedes for the TBS title at All Out would be one good way. You could do a casino gauntlet for a chance at Mercedes Monet's TBS title at All Out. That's where I would have Dakota come out and possibly win it, similar to what they did with Ricochet at All In last year. Have the debut during the casino gauntlet would be cool. And then ideally women's tag titles with maybe Willow and Chris. The main event is worth it, but I would still love to make sure that they make sure that like at least 3 women's matches happen.
I understand the equality part of this because God knows on AEW shows for years, they would have one women's match and it would get 6 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever. And
The
all the
women's
men's
title
matches
match at All In 2 years ago or 3 years ago got 8 minutes. Yeah.
Right. So I'm all with you about having more women represented on the card and more women's matches because it gives us more content. Let's be honest here. One women's match doesn't give us much to discuss. It's one match, right? Like we're going to talk about a WWE PLE here in a sec that had one match, women's match. But when Hogan and Warrior did the thing, it was champion versus champion, who's the best. That was the draw. To me, I'm not saying like your ideas are fine. No, conceal gauntlet, eliminator match is cool. But Tony versus Mercedes has to be kept special. The only way you keep it special is Mercedes cannot lose on AEW TV until the possibility of losing to Tony, and Tony cannot lose until that match because that's bigger than. It's bigger than it's not about the women, it's about the match.
Yeah, it's a boxing
yeah.
You know, for anyone who thinks about how Raj and I talk about booking and how to make the biggest match, and Raj, you're absolutely right. Boxing, the biggest matches have only ever happened, and boxing is not, pre-planned. The biggest matches with the biggest gates only ever come through when someone's on an either completely undefeated or on an undefeated run. And actually, Tony and Mercedes reminds me of Pacquiao Mayweather, and this is how I see it. Not stylistically. Hear me out. Tony is like Pacquiao. Floyd Mayweather, Pacquiao's biggest rivals are Eric Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez. So Mariah is one of those dudes. Marquez is one of those guys. The better matches, the back and forth. This guy beat him, that guy beat him. And then he gets in the ring with Floyd, and that's the best-selling match he's ever had. And it wasn't even a good match, but it was the best-selling match of Manny and Floyd's career, both of them. And in this case, Mercedes is Floyd. In AEW, she's never lost. And the draw was Manny had lost several matches before the Floyd match. But the draw was Manny had not lost in a while, and Floyd had never lost. And Manny had something that, people thought Floyd could lose. And that's what you're talking about building up is Mercedes, Tony, no one's been able to beat them. And they're going to collide, and you'd be dumb to not want to see the match. That's what you're selling because it will be a moment. So I get it. I'd love to see them build more women's TV time regardless of all that. So that's all I'm saying.
So I know you're a huge boxing fan. I'm a huge boxing fan. It's the only sport my dad and I ever watched together other than Michael Jordan games. So, I grew up on boxing, and I remember Pacquiao Mayweather for years. This match, there was, Pacquiao wouldn't do the drug test, and there was so much controversy. And then finally, they had the match. It wasn't good, but they still got 4.5 million pay-per-view buys, which is by far the most in the history of pay-per-view, and nothing will touch that number. I mean,
never again. Yeah.
I worked in cable at that point, processing. They're still processing. No, this is crazy. This was in 2021. They were still processing pay-per-view orders from that fight. Like, that's how many people ordered this thing, that they're find another order that they didn't realize happened in some country. Like, it's crazy. Like, Pacquiao and Mayweather are still getting residuals from that match. So I agree with you there. Like, boxing works when it's like you're gonna have, I think in September we're gonna get Canelo Alvarez against the guy from Omaha. Jeez, how do I not? Terrence Crawford. And it's like, okay, somebody's going up. Yeah, it is Terrence Crawford. Somebody's going up in weight class and all that stuff. To me, with back to Toni Storm and Mercedes, they have something that is a legitimate AEW women's dream match, which, to be honest, they have not had. Like, right. They have not had a AEW women's dream match that people are clamoring for. Like, oh my God, when Toni and Mercedes finally touch, like when Mercedes did the wave to Toni, like, people were like, oh my goodness, like, this is happening. You gotta go through with it. This is one opportunity for AEW to say to all the women's wrestling fans, we are equal players to the big promotion. Because let's be honest here, and this is my humble opinion, AEW has not had a women's match that is on par with what the triple threat did this past Mania for those three women. AEW needs their version of it, because Mariah May and Toni did it, but then Mariah May's off TV now. And now all you've done is, if she's legitimately going to WWE, you've literally handed them a bigger star. Mercedes isn't going anywhere. Toni Storm isn't going anywhere. They are the two women who, if they main event all in Dallas or all in Texas, it's an indictment of WWE not knowing what it had with both of these women. So to me, that's how you have to do it. They have to be kept strong. You cannot make either of them lose. I need the dream match. I want the promos. I want the sit-down interviews. I want the back. In fact, I would prefer they don't even touch until All in Texas. I just want promos, vignettes. Like, I want timeless Toni Storm training in black and white, and I want Mercedes like practicing in front of a mirror on how to cut a timeless Toni Storm type promo. Like, I want stuff like that. That's what I'm looking for. So
I want to see Toni Storm train with Wendy Richter.
Yeah, like, I want to see that. Like, I want to see them go all out for this match. I think it's a dream match. I think they could main event. I think they should main event. It depends on what the men is. To me, I don't watch AEW for men, the men's wrestling part. I like certain things. I like the Hurt Business or Hurt Syndicate. Ricochet's been really entertaining. Swerve is good. Hangman is good, I guess. Like, to me, it's really about Mercedes and Toni. They're my two favorite characters in AEW. So I want to see that match. Final thoughts before we get to WWE.
No, I think I agree with you. That's the right way to do it if they're going to do it. What I will say is the other version of that path, and she could lose to Jamie, and it could be that they've decided to do something else. We'll see. I think that's going to be a great match, so I'm just excited to see what they do with that. So lots more to come on that title and the Owen Hart Cup. Let's pivot to, let's do SmackDown first. They did a lot of good women's stuff on SmackDown. What did you think of the show?
Yeah, SmackDown looked like an NXT show, honestly,
It did.
with the amount of women represented. So, yeah, let's review SmackDown. Zelina Vega, U.S. champion, had a mystery partner. They were teasing it, the Invisible Woman, and it's in Dayton, Ohio. And of course, if you're going to get the biggest pop for Zelina Vega, which, to be fair, she has struggled in getting the reaction other than in Puerto Rico. You need Alexa Bliss, and that's who her mystery partner was. It was Alexa Bliss. She got a thunderous ovation,
She
including
did.
a now meme of the guy who was like in complete and utter shock that she was there. They came out. I thought the tag match was actually very well executed, which was Zelina got beat up the whole match. The hot
Yep.
tag was for Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss did all her moves. And I gotta say this, and I am definitely, of the two of us, the bigger Alexa Bliss fan. I have been a Bliss fit, as they say, from the beginning. Even in her NXT days, I like the pixie Alexa Bliss. And I met her once, and she was very nice to me, so I've always had a little bias there. But I think she improved in the ring. Like, she did a reverse blockbuster. She did some new stuff. I was like, okay, Alexa, you've been training, and good for you. She obviously won the match. She put her foot on Chelsea and did the salute. And I'm kind of like, okay, this is great, but what's going on? Like, what's the story here? Because she's clearly not going to be in a story with Zelina Vega unless she turns on her. But then we figured out where the story goes. So then the next segment, funny enough, was Charlotte Flair coming out. And I thought she did a really good job with what she was trying to do, which was she was playing into all of the tropes that people have against her online, which
Mm-hmm.
is, she said, me and Tiffany had the greatest women's match in WrestleMania history, when everybody knows she's trolling because it was a terrible match. If we're being honest, it was not good. She knows it
Yeah.
wasn't good. And she's playing into it to get more, that kind of visceral hate. She talked about how she's the greatest of all time, which gets another amount of visceral hate. She says, I'm going to leave. And they said, goodbye, leave. So she did her job. She was trying to get them to completely boo her, and she did a great job, and they were booing her, and she left. So Jade's music hits. Jade comes out. They have done this stare 3 different times. So it tells me that there is a direction here with these two. Okay, so they go away. Now Jade comes in. Jade has a match against Nia Jax. Winner is the #1 contender for Tiffany Stratton, which I believe will happen on Saturday night's main event in 2 weeks in Tampa. Now, I have to say this. Jade and Nia had surprisingly good chemistry. This was actually a pretty good match. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, what do they say about the men? The meat slap.
Big,
This
big meaty men
was
slapping meat.
two very strong,
Biggie.
powerful women just hammering each other. And I liked it. I thought it was a good TV match. Meats, yes, slapping the meat. I thought it was a really good women's TV match. I thought, for the physicality that both have, and the way they lay into each other, it was really good. Jade did some new stuff. Nia sold very well. And then, of course, the most compelling women's character on WWE TV comes out, which is Naomi. She knocked Tiffany out, cost Jade the match, and then kind of took off. So Naomi cost Jade the match. Jade lost. Nia Jax is the #1 contender. Clearly, I think Tiffany and Nia are going to kind of close their feud, because did Tiffany not have a rematch already with Nia Jax where she beat her?
I thought
Tiffany,
she did a week or two later. I
okay,
thought she
okay. So
did.
I wasn't imagining it. So I don't know where they're going with. To me, what it's setting up is it's either Naomi straight out beats Tiffany for the title, or Naomi is Miss Money in the Bank and then she beats Tiffany for the title. But it clearly tells me watching SmackDown that Naomi is going to be the champ, which we're all for on this show.
Yeah.
Then even more compelling. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Even more compelling. So now Charlotte's backstage. She's being Charlotte the Brat to Nick Aldis and basically saying, Nick, this place doesn't deserve me. I'm going to quit. I don't even want to come back here. She's being the brat. Driver, I'm ready to leave. And the camera pans and it's Alexa Bliss. She says, let's chat. I'm going to say this. This is the most compelling Charlotte character maybe ever. I am so interested in this Alexa Bliss and Charlotte pairing. Also, as an Alexa Bliss fan, I want to point out that now she has to prop Charlotte up because she gets the reaction that Charlotte wishes she could get. But that's not here or there. Now, I am compelled. Does this go, the Queen goes to the dark side with Alexa? Or does Alexa go back to being the goddess? And is it the goddess and the Queen, or is it the Queen goes to the dark side? Very compelled. Streets are saying these two are going to beat Liv and Raquel for the tag belts, which I'm all for, because these two women have enough star power and cachet to legitimately. We always say this about the tag belts. Oh, if you give it to these two, they can elevate it. Bianca and Jade did that. Liv and Raquel are doing it. I think these two women can do it as well. So that's my review of SmackDown. I enjoyed it. I thought all the women were represented very well. They told several good stories, and they are keeping me entertained for the next week and the next couple of weeks because I don't know where this is all going. So it's good TV.
It was good TV. We have an episode maybe in our first month or two, and it was so it would have been last summer, where we used a specific term and we were giving WWE props of creating the best women's ecosystem on TV. And it occurs to me that the women, going back years now, Mania, WWE women during the summer are booked significantly better than they are during Mania season. And if you go back and look at fan sentiment, we're always frustrated during Mania season, and we're happiest during the summer. Charlotte and Sasha were the focal point of the summer. Becky's story got started and told out over a summer. The Golden Role Models were told over a summer. Rhea Liv hit its high points over a summer. And what they do a better job of over the summer, and it's not just those tentpole stories, ecosystem. I felt like every woman on the show last night were aware of each other, shared a locker room, and have relational feelings about what everyone else is doing and how they're acting. It makes compelling TV. Not just interacting with who you're feuding with, but understanding oh, what are they doing over there? And oh my God, you're in their business. And it all comes together because they share a locker room. And when they do that, the product is much better. And they did a great job of that yesterday. Jade and Charlotte, even though Jade's still got issues with Naomi, Charlotte, Alexa, it all blended really, really well.
I think the only thing I would look at as a little bit of a drawback is that the US champion was the least over and the least compelling of all of these characters.
Well, that's, Zelina is being given a run for doing, good work over, the office sees her as doing good work over the last, year or two. And I've not always been the hugest fan. And what I'll say is I would presume that she's going to need to start getting better reactions for herself to keep the belt a little bit longer. And, they let her wrestle. Was the match against Piper was good, and she got good reactions during the match. They're not doing her any favors with her song. her entrance music. The Def Rebel stuff is funny because of how bad it is. She might have the worst one.
That's
I've heard it. I've heard it 50 times, and I still can't recognize it on the first 5 seconds that she's the one coming out. If I wasn't looking,
even the Alexa Bliss Def Rebel remix sucks. Like,
it's
why can't we just get her old music back? The dunna dunna dunna
yeah.
dunna dunna instead of the dunna and then it pauses. I hated it, but I will say this. So while Zelina Vega is a not compelling mid-card champion, very quickly, let's go to the other side of the bracket.
Wait, real quick,
Oh.
before we jump over to Lyra, Alexa and Charlotte. I am very, very interested if Alexa, Charlotte, it's a little bit of what Becky's turn heel about. We talked a couple weeks ago about Charlotte and Bayley leaving the company. I could very much see goal turn into the Alexas and Charlottes of the world teaming up, and the chat could very much be, hey, this place to run it don't look anything like that anymore. And I'm the only one who respects you, and you're the only one who respects me. And we should watch each other's backs because these new girls are crazy. Like it very much, that would be a very good way. The young, new to WWE over the last 3 to 5 years, let those women shine while also having a central role for the women who've been around longer than that.
How would you feel about Naomi world champion on SmackDown, Charlotte, Alexa tag champs, and they're the three who are like what we're talking about? We used to run this place, and we're going to put all these young punks in check who think they can take our spot.
It's yeah, and if they really committed to it, because here's the thing, Damage Control is maybe the only faction where they committed to it, where there was long-term commitment of a team up. If they committed to it, and then it became a thing where they also have young people in their group, but they're their handpicked young people, right? They bring up someone to the main roster to be their muscle or sign someone like let's let it have legs and not just be like a 3-month we tried to run the division type of thing. I think that would be fantastic. It'd be a fantastic start. You could bring Asuka back and have it be part of it, have her be part of it too. But
yeah,
I'm very interested, and that's the point.
I'd be all for Asuka with the US title, Naomi with the world title, Charlotte and Alexa with the tag belts, and they're kind of running stuff as the old guard. And I mean, look, you say what you want, there have been very few women, and we've already chronicled this, as popular as Alexa Bliss. And there have been very few women, if any at all, that they've pushed as hard as Charlotte Flair. So I know, shout out to Tracy. She had a great tweet when she saw Charlotte and Alexa, I guess, talking to each other. She goes, "This is my 2017 Sasha Banks fandom nightmare." Which, I mean, yeah, she's kind of right there. I mean, that's kind of what 2017 was, right? 2017, Charlotte beat Sasha at WrestleMania she lost to a pole or a post. Turnbuckle. And then later on, Alexa beat her clean. So yeah, I get that point, but I think this is the most compelling that Charlotte has been in a long time. And I could almost say the same thing about Alexa, because me personally, I am a huge Alexa Bliss fan. I am not an Alexa Bliss, Wyatt, Spirit, throw fireballs fan. I don't need any of that. Like, I liked cocky little Miss Bliss. I liked that character. So if I can get back to the goddess, and it's the queen and the goddess or something like that, I'm all for it. So we were going to pivot to Lyra. Let's pivot to Lyra. So WWE had Backlash PLE last night. for the purposes of our show, there's only one match that really we're going to discuss, which was Intercontinental title match. Lyra defending her title against the newly turned heel Becky Lynch. And they had a really good match. Well, I would say they had a good match. It was long. They got a lot of time, and that was great. They told a really good story. Lyra has this trick, very, very Sasha Banks like, where if you might start not loving her stuff at the beginning, by the time you get to the end of the match, the crowd is fully invested in her wanting to win. She's done this a couple of different times now, even against Io. She did it on the Raw episode. They told the story that, Lyra has Becky's number. This is the second time she's beat Becky with similar type of move, which is like a wrestling hold, a reversal into a pinfall. Becky
Also very
snapped.
Sasha Banks like.
Yep. Becky snapped after, gave her the disarmer, had her screaming in pain. So clearly this feud is going to continue. And I think Becky will get her win back at some point and get the title. But for now, I was very fine with Lyra winning and continuing the, hey, I'm a better wrestler than you. You can't beat me story, which I think will just make Becky snap more, which is fine. But before we get to your review of the match, I also want to say something here. This is more of a public service announcement. So Becky cut a promo on Raw that I know what she's trying to do. I took out the garbage in Bayley. Bayley is trash. I need to take out the trash. You should thank me. You fans are ungrateful. I take out the trash, blah, blah, blah. The problem with her promo is it gives incels the platform to then believe that Bayley is garbage. And there have been a lot of derogatory comments made about Bayley this week that she's garbage and she's washed and she should be cut and she should be released. Okay.
It's gotten
This
even
is
way
where,
nastier. There's some real nasty stuff under that stuff too. Go ahead.
yeah. And so where I sit with this is I understand what Becky's trying to do. I get it. She's setting up the eventual return of Bayley to be a big deal so people could see Bayley beat the crap out of Becky, get Becky's comeuppance. Bayley will win the IC title. I know this is where the story's going, and fine. But I think Becky, of all people, needs to be very careful with cutting these type of promos, because I don't think people are just taking it as a wrestling angle. I think people are taking it a little too far, and Bayley does not deserve that. She's done everything right for the business of women's wrestling. She's a trailblazer. She is somebody who has inspired a lot of women like Lyra, like Mariah May, like Roxanne, who we'll talk about here in a sec, to become women's wrestlers. And she has made the industry a better place. So she does not deserve the venom. And I understand what Becky was trying to do. It's just a wrestling promo. But the problem is a lot of men, and I have to preface this, take it as it's gospel because Becky is saying it, and it's giving them a foundation to crap all over Bayley and say some very nasty things about her that's allowing then fans to piggyback off that who don't like Bayley, and it's not right. So that's all I have to say.
It gives them they feel that way. The flaw starts with them. He's giving them a platform. See, we're right. A platform for the sexism, the misogyny. Women's wrestling is so precarious in this community because there's still a lack of respect. You can put Daniel Bryan on a losing streak, or Edge, or AJ Styles, and you could have someone promo and say AJ Styles is garbage. You suck. Finn Balor, you're garbage. You're trash. You're a terrible wrestler. You can tell John Cena that he can't wrestle, and the fans have always told him that, and he's still John Cena, right? Because ultimately people can't take away that he's John Cena. And women's wrestling, even for a legend like Bayley, still deals with so much hate. A Mercedes Moné post still is 50-50 people hating. A Bayley post is still 50-50 people hating. Becky, Charlotte gets so much terrible interaction about she's had surgeries, and there's still all of these things in women's wrestling. That's why we were against Tiffany going after her looks. We spoke out against that. It's the same type of thing. And you have these people with hate in their hearts. They're watching for the men, and then a woman gets on TV and calls a legend garbage and really lays the point in, and you have them going, see, I've always said Bayley was garbage. You got former WWE guys saying, she's never sold a ticket and she doesn't deserve to be on the roster. We got to be better than this. You can get heel heat without going down that path.
My problem with that last comment you made about the person who used to work in WWE who, sucked when they worked in WWE and sucks now even more, saying Bayley never sold a ticket. See, my problem is, at least if you're going to say something like that, have some data to back it up.
Right.
I have personally refuted it. I put it on my Twitter feed at King Ajar. Bayley had 2 of the top 7 selling merchandise items at WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia.
Yep.
The only other woman that was on that list was Rhea Ripley. So if you're selling merch at the level of Rhea Ripley, then you're a draw. And I don't care what anybody says. Am I saying that? Do I think Bayley sells more merch than Rhea Ripley? No, I don't. But Bayley is at least on a list of 10 items, and she has 2 of the top 10 items. Now, let me tell you something. When WWE says it's one of the top 10 selling items at a WrestleMania, that doesn't mean they sold 12 shirts. We're talking thousands of shirts. Yep. Thousands, like 000 at the end, like 10,000, 5,000, 12,000. You do the math. At $40 a pop, that's money. So if somebody is going to make a claim that Bayley has never sold a ticket, then put some stats behind it, because it's factually incorrect. She was the #1 merch seller in NXT when she was there. Yes, I know it was a long time ago, but the fact is she has done that. She was a top merch seller when she first came onto the main roster. Yes, Alexa Bliss caught fire, kind of dimmed her spotlight a little bit, but then Bayley got hot. Golden role models, for the limited merch they had, they did very well. She did very well as a babyface champ at Mania. So Bayley does sell tickets. Bayley does sell merchandise. Bayley is a draw. Is Bayley Roman Reigns? No, she's not. Is she, is anybody Roman Reigns? I don't know. Is anybody Jey Uso in terms of merch? Maybe Rhea, I don't know. But my point is she does. So if you're going to make a claim about her, at least have facts behind it, which is incorrect. She does sell merchandise. She does draw ticket sales.
She also had...
Go ahead.
Also was part of... Okay, so there's 3 huge numbers that happened during the pandemic from a ratings perspective on SmackDown. There's 3 seminal moments of the pandemic. #1 is Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens. That had a lead-in, correct?
NFL lead-in, yeah.
So that one is not necessarily a real number, but a lot of people did stick around, and that's the highest number. But the highest clean number, #2 number, and then also the biggest growth, both involve Bayley. One clean number, Bayley versus Sasha Banks rematch for the title. That's the #1 pandemic SmackDown number for a match. Besides that, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns won with the NFL lead-in. And the highest growth quarter of the whole pandemic, where people were like, oh my God, I got to turn SmackDown on, was when Bayley turned on Sasha Banks during the match against Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax. Those are the two of the top three most important data points ratings wise for SmackDown when they had no crowds. Can't crap on Bayley's name as an ability to sell tickets, sell merch, draw ratings. She has always done well when given a compelling story to work with. And when I say well, I mean very well. If she's been put in a compelling storyline that's consistent and has good character motivations around it, fans have always reacted well to Bayley.
Yeah. So, if we're gonna down talk Bayley, at least have legitimate facts behind it, which they don't. But the other part that you said that was very important is that when Tiffany did the tweet about Charlotte's looks, or even Nia Jax making the joke about Bayley having a BBL, while these are all things that are tongue-in-cheek to sell a wrestling angle, we got to be very careful because women still face such discrimination and sexism and hate that the women themselves shouldn't be adding fuel to men's
100%.
fire, right? Like, they need to be very cognizant that you're just arming incels to say nonsense. See, the thing and I've always said this, Charlotte Flair, the wrestling character, I'm not a fan of. I think she's a little bit overrated as a wrestler, and the character I've never loved. It's kind of a clone of her dad, who, I'm a very big fan of in terms of the character. Ashley Flair, the human being, I actually probably like as much as any of the women I've read stories about outside of the ring, because I've read her book multiple times, and there's real pain and there's real struggle with her, what she's gone through her whole life with looks, and being called like she looks like her dad, and all that. Like, there's real struggle and pain that she's gone through. And again, I've always said, and I think you've been kind of at the forefront of this, we've never gotten to see that character on screen where people could actually get behind her. But my point is, Ashley Flair, from everything I've read, seems like a really good person. She's really nice. She's always looked out for people. The Naomis, the B-Fabs, and the Jades, and all of them have always talked about how she's always pushing for women of color to get spotlight in WWE that maybe they're not able to get without somebody like her kind of saying, hey, I want to work with this person, I want to work with that person. So I give her all the credit for that. And that's why Tiffany has to be careful about throwing those jabs at Charlotte, and Nia should be Nia probably should filter a lot of stuff out that she has said recently. But like, the women already have such a struggle because they have to deal with like men. Like, we are wrestling fans of what the women produce in the ring. A lot of men's wrestling fans, and I hate to say it like this, do watch for how the women look, and that's what they watch for, and that's fine, but they almost take it too far with some of their comments and how they speak about them at ringside and stuff. Women should not be contributing to that. They need to be very careful. And I gotta say, and the Becky, like, at the time when Becky cut the promo, I was listening to it and I was like, this is kind of redundant and repetitive. Like, why do you keep saying garbage over and over
Said the
again?
word so many times, yeah.
I'm trying to drill it into my head. But then when I saw the comments after, I'm like, oh, this took a turn that I wasn't expecting. And maybe I'm naive, and I don't need to be naive because I'm a wrestling fan. I've been my whole life. I just looked at it as a wrestling promo. Like, she's trying to get the point across that she's this bad heel and Bayley is trash, and Bayley's going to come back and get her revenge and beat her up and win the title, and everybody's going to celebrate. But it took a turn that I wasn't expecting. And now that I see it that way, I kind of need Becky to tone the rhetoric down. Like, I need her to tone the rhetoric down because Bayley doesn't deserve that. And honestly, no women deserves it, including Becky. Like, I wouldn't want Lyra to say, Becky, you're garbage, and then everybody starts to call Becky garbage. Like, I wouldn't want that for her either. So yeah, those are my thoughts. But I guess we're going Lyra, Becky more, and then Bayley comes back. I guess that's going to be the story.
Yeah,
Probably.
I thought the match was very good as well. I actually, so here's where I'm at with Becky. Um, and I think I'm getting more and more labeled a Becky hater. And that's, maybe fair, but I used to like Becky more than I like Bayley for a very long time. And I was a huge fan of the man and that whole turn. I haven't really vibed as much with her since Big Time Bex became a thing, right? I think the in-ring has been fantastic. She's obviously put a lot of really great work into making sure her matches are very, very good, and I have all the respect in the world for that. This match actually helps me communicate to everyone what I like still about Becky and what I don't like about Becky. And this match was exactly it's both. The heel stuff is working for me in match, okay? Because her job as a heel is to make me care about Lyra more than I've ever cared about Lyra. And Lyra's part of that as well. And during this match, I'm watching and I'm just like really getting invested in, is Lyra going to beat her? Oh my God, this is Becky's first match back. Is Lyra really going to beat her? And that feeling of me wanting that to happen just escalated as the match went on. So props to both of them because that's what you're selling. Here's where I'm taken out a little bit. The I'm a heel now. Heel now. Too thin for me. It was too thin for me when she turned. It was too thin for me when she called Bayley garbage, and it was way too thin for me when she attacked Lyra after the match. I don't what she's doing. I don't it's like, oh, I'm having a crash out. Oh, I'm so big and mad. And it's very, I know she's acting. That's not supposed to come across that way. And it's like, I just, it just doesn't, the facial expressions, the way she's pulling the arm and how crazy she's getting with it. It's just, I don't think it comes across as real. And it comes across a little bit try hard. And I felt like the turn came across try hard. You came back, you won the tag titles, and then you lost the next day, and all of a sudden, you dropped this girl on her head basically and beat her up, and it just I just haven't connected with it at all. Outside of the match, I'm not connecting with why he is so big and bad, like it's just and she's got to dial it back and make it feel a little bit more real. She's going too far. Like, this is how a bad person acts. Like, that's what I get from it. This is what a bad guy does. From
Yeah.
what she's doing.
Yeah. So you have brought this point up since the turn. I think you've been saying this for a couple of years. I don't think it's something new, but I think when she did the whole thing with Lyra, you really kind of honed in on that point. And as I do to prepare for our show, I try to listen to a couple of different podcasts just to kind of see, is there an angle that I didn't see of something? And funny enough, and it's a very famous podcaster, wrestling podcaster, he verbatim, I thought he literally tapped our chat because I messaged you last night and I said, oh my goodness, he said exactly what you said. Like, to the T, he said, I like the heel work as a wrestler. I hate the overacting, the overselling, the over being a brat. Like, this was the quote. If she never does that again, it's too soon. Says, I hate it. It's just too phony and it's too fake. And it just is like, I'm trying to be hated. And it's like, I'm hating you for the wrong reason. I'm not hating you because of your character. I'm hating you because you act so poorly at it. And so obviously it's out there. You might be the first to market with it, but it's a thought other people have. I never saw that until you pointed it out, because I really tried to just pay attention to the match. And I didn't. The story with Lyra has sucked from me from the beginning. Like, the
Yeah.
story is stupid. You took out Bayley to get the WrestleMania match. You're the reason Lyra lost, because Lyra pretty much wrestled the match on her own. Then you turned to be a brat and turn on her. You go to the match and then you lose. And then you cut a promo to a person who's already beaten you once and said that person sucks. Well, if that person sucks, what are you? Because she's already beaten you. So I have never loved the story. I like the match, and I like that they're like, we just said it. What they're doing with Lyra is what they need to do with, maybe not Zelina, but somebody who gets that title. Also, before we started recording, there's a wrestler that you are a huge fan of, and I'm a very big fan of. And we said, why didn't they book this person like they booked Lyra? And that person is Roxanne. So let's pivot over to Roxanne as we kind of wind down here for this week. Roxanne has lost match after match after match after match. She's won 3 times this year on WWE TV, and she's lost, I think, 15.
Yep.
So Monday night, she has a match against Io Sky, who, it's Io Sky. So, I'm obviously going to watch it. I would watch Io wrestle a broom. That being said, Roxanne is no broom. She is a phenomenal talent. They had a good match. I thought the match was good. It was a good match. I didn't say it was great. It was good. But the story they told in the match was very peculiar, which is Roxanne was working Io's leg the whole time. So Io couldn't do the moonsault, which is, it's great wrestling psychology. But then Io pinned her with a cradle. Okay. And then Roxanne did the whole fake, hey, I respect you, wonderful, goes out of the ring, and then Julia jumps Io and they beat her down. So my problem with this whole thing is, why couldn't Julia help Roxanne actually win the match? And number 2, why couldn't that be the story that Io, because of a bad leg and that she has no backup, lost? Because then it tells the Rhea Io story better, which is, we have to be friends because we have the same enemies. I just didn't understand the point of Roxanne losing this match. And look, I don't want to see Io lose. But for the purposes of this story, I thought Io should have lost. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, a non-finish would have been fine there, right? Have Julia interfere earlier, even a DQ for Roxanne. So here's where I'm at on Roxanne. Her biggest fans are totally crashing out because she's 3-15, and I get that. I'm not saying that they are wrong to be very frustrated. And then you have maybe fans of Roxanne, fans of women's wrestling who are main roster fans, more so like, guys, she's new to the roster. She's got to pay her dues, take her lumps, blah, blah, blah. It's not that serious yet. I lean towards fans feel, and I feel that way similarly. And we try to not just have opinions on this show, but we try to have informed opinions. And so I also looked into what I was trying to portray. And here's the best way that I can say it. Why I'm worried about Roxanne and the way that they're booking Roxanne. Roxanne is a former 2-time NXT Women's Champion, and they were not flash in the pan title runs. Okay. Let's look at how they have brought NXT Women's Champions to the main roster in the past. Paige was booked strong and became the Divas Champion immediately, correct? Right? AJ Lee, night 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I was in the
Charlotte,
building.
yep. Charlotte, Sasha were brought up on the same day. Sasha was still champion. Charlotte wasn't, but they were brought up at the same time, and they were both booked incredibly strong for um, for Sasha for the next maybe 2 years. You'd say very strongly booked, and Charlotte has been booked strong her whole career. Um, Bayley, very very much protected when she came up. I don't recall who her first loss was to, but she was the women's champion within a year of being called up. Right, she won in
Charlotte.
February.
Her
Yeah,
her first loss was Charlotte in the three-way with Bayley, Charlotte, and Sasha. She lost to Charlotte.
at Clash of Champions,
Yeah.
or not? Yeah, but then she
Mhm.
won the title within a year of coming up. Asuka,
Oh,
her
yeah, for sure. She won the title quick.
was booked incredibly strong and then faltered, and she didn't win the title, and her first loss was at WrestleMania. Shayna was actually booked very strong when she came up, and I could go through the whole list. You know who wasn't booked strong ever when she came up? Singles wrestler
Athena.
Kyrie and Athena. So what I'm saying is, Dan, you expect her to have a Kyrie or Ember Moon type run on the main roster. That's what the booking looks like. And that's not good. Kyrie went back home and Athena left.
And
Io,
Kyrie came back.
kind of in the middle, never been booked well on WWE TV as a singles wrestler for
Who,
an extended
Kyrie?
period
No,
of time.
I don't think so.
Never
No.
happened. Io was not booked bad. She wasn't booked well. She almost left, and then she came back as part of Damage Control, and she's been booked great since then, for the most part. So,
On the main roster, Io has never been booked bad because she only came back she was never on the main roster. She was leaving, and then she came back with Damage Control, and from that point on, she's always been booked well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is abnormal for a prospect Roxanne's pedigree to come up to the main roster and be booked this poorly and end up being who we all expect her to be, and that's a future world champion. Generally, when they've been booked like this, it is a bad sign for how the main roster views her. The only woman I could think of that lost this much, came up, and has ultimately become a top of the card talent, the only one, Morgan. But Liv Morgan was not Roxanne on NXT TV. She was never the NXT Women's Champion. She was brought up as one third of an act, right, of Riot Squad, and she's made her way and ascended to the top of the card. But Roxanne is one of the greatest NXT Women's Champions of all time, so it is a little concerning. Same thing that Mello fans feel about Carmelo Hayes and the way he's been booked. I have the same bad feeling for both of them about the way they're being booked. Does the office on the main roster really know what they have there? And I don't think
Okay,
that they
so
do.
all right, so for the sake of our show, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Were you a Becky fan in 2015?
After Unstoppable, yes.
Yeah, okay. How was Becky booked on the main roster when she got called up with Charlotte and Sasha? Was she booked as strong as the other two?
No, but she wasn't a former NXT Women's Champion
No,
at
she
that time.
wasn't. She wasn't a former NXT Women's Champion, correct. But if let's say Becky and Roxanne have parallels in this sense. Becky lost a lot on the main roster, a lot. Like even when she got the title, she was a transitional champion, right? Like she got the belt, lost it to Bliss, got the belt again, lost it to Bliss.
She was the
You know,
first ST Women's Champion, though.
she was. But let's say in 2 years, Roxanne could become Becky. Nobody will remember this, right? Like people forget that of the three call ups, because the reason I'm only bringing this up is Becky cut a promo about this. When Becky in 2019 was feuding with Sasha Banks, she cut a very real promo where she said, I was brought up here with no fanfare to the main roster while they gave her flowers. That is true. When Sasha left NXT, they gave her flowers when she left. And Becky was all, and she writes about it in her book, so you can go check it out. Like Becky always thought like she was as good as Charlotte and Sasha, but she never got like the push they got. So that's why I think, not to go into this is not a Becky topic, but that's why I think Becky protects her spot so much, because she never had it, and then when she got it, she's never going to give it up. Now let's get to Roxanne. I'm 50-50 on this one. I could see Roxanne being the next great enhancement talent on the main roster, or I can see Roxanne, this is all part of her story. She ends up getting the belt. She ends up getting a real push as a heel champion. I think Roxanne could be a tremendous babyface because she has a very likable quality to her. I don't know where this is going to go. I'm going to say that if I were to put my money on it, I would lean towards it'll be fine because she's such a good wrestler and she's so young. And those are the two things she has going for her. Youth. She looks like she has a presence to her, but she's a great in-ring worker. So I think those three things lean me to think that she'll be taken care of down the road. But I do understand the fans of hers like yourself who have trepidation about how she's been booked up to this point, because I think the most disturbing thing is not that she's losing to Io Sky. The fact that they dropped her feud with Bayley.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. The fact that she wasn't on WrestleMania. The fact that she kind of went away for a while, went to NXT to lose to Jordan Grace, to lose to Kalani Jordan, and then magically gets Julia as her partner. Like, a lot of the story just doesn't make sense. That's why I feel like maybe you're warranted in your worry, because it feels like they're throwing stuff against the wall for her and they're hoping something sticks. That's never a good thing.
Yeah. To your analogy, Sasha, Charlotte, and Becky, there's no Becky in the group of call-ups that Roxanne is kind of a part of, who didn't win the title. So you got Tiffany, Lyra, Roxanne. Now, Roxanne stayed in NXT longer than the other two. The other two have been on main roster for a while. So Roxanne's almost like Bayley in that position, right?
Yeah.
Lyra is like Sasha, and Tiffany's like Charlotte. All former NXT champions. Tiffany and Lyra, even when Lyra wasn't on TV, she wasn't on TV just taking loads of losses, right? When she's not been winning, she's mostly been off of TV. So they're using Roxanne in a way where her wrestling ability almost feels like they're like, we can put on a great match, we can put on a great segment. The act we want to get over is going to get over, and Roxanne is going to have the crowd invested. And that's great, but that's like how William Regal was used. That's how Fit Finley was used on the guy's side. That's how Sasha Banks was used in 2017, 18, and early 19. It's not what Roxanne and her fans envision for her main roster career. I'm not saying she's going to be stuck here forever. What I am saying is it feels as though the office sees more in Lyra and Tiffany than they see in Roxanne, at least to start with. And that's wild to me. To me, that's crazy.
The Lyra part is crazy. Again, I'm going to come across, yes, I am a Tiffany fan. I've always said it on this show. Have you heard her pops?
Oh,
Like, I mean, so like, I don't like, if you're going to tell me if the office says we're pushing Tiffany over Roxanne, I'm not talking about wrestling ability. I think Roxanne is miles above many wrestlers, male or female, by the way. I think Roxanne is she's just brilliant as a wrestler. My goodness, Tiffany's popular. Like she is popular. So that at least makes some sense. The Lyra one doesn't, because Roxanne, I've always felt like, even with main roster crowds, has gotten better reactions than Lyra.
Yeah. I mean,
so that I don't get.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. Tiffany's been great, and she's way over. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have pushed her here, but Roxanne is the most complete performer in the ring. And I'd say of the three, it goes Roxanne,
Mhm.
Tiffany, as far as
Lyra,
just bell to bell.
I would say Lyra. I would say Roxanne, Lyra, then Tiffany. I think they're both better wrestlers in the ring than Tiffany. And I'm a Tiffany fan, but I'm being honest here.
So Tiffany may have maybe the most fleshed out character. Um, Although I would argue the promo Roxanne cut in ring, her first one was very, very good. Like there's
That
not a
was good.
part of
That was
her
a good
game.
promo.
There's not part of her game that's not ready for primetime TV. So it's less about that Lyra and Tiffany shouldn't be being booked well. It's more about she's being booked so poorly, and that's what's shocking. That's really what I'm shocked.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so I don't know what's going to happen on the tag match tomorrow night, which is, Rhea returns Io fighting Julia and Roxanne. Now, again, I could be shocked about this. I would be shocked if Rhea or Io lose that match. I'd be shocked.
Right.
The only way I could see them losing is if they fight each other and then somebody gets rolled up. And that doesn't really do anything for Roxanne or Julia. Like that makes them look like you guys are just you're in our way almost. But if Roxanne and Julia legitimately can win, let's say Roxanne pins Io, and it sets up Saturday night's main event where Roxanne and Io have a great match, but Io will win. Does that change your perspective of Roxanne, or does that even give you more ammunition? Because it's like, she's a mechanic that is used to elevate who we really want to elevate. So we put Roxanne in there with Io, and we put Roxanne in there with Rhea, and we put Roxanne in there with Tiffany. But we really don't have plans for Roxanne, but her job is to make them look good. Where would you be if that's what it played out?
If it plays out that way, it's better than the other way. There's two ways it plays out. That's the better way because there's at least this idea of they're going to put her in a spot and let her prove herself. Um, it's never great being the feud where the champ is not going to lose. That's not a great spot to be in. Where it's like, I don't even think Vegas would take money on that Io would lose because it's not happening on Saturday Night Main Event. Here's the flip side. There's another way they tell this story, and it's terrible for Roxanne if it happens. What if this match is all about Rhea? Because Rhea promoed, she's not ready to chase the belt, right? What if this
Mm-hmm.
match is Io and Rhea exist? Rhea pins Roxanne. You get the old fist bump with Io and Rhea, where Rhea basically on camera says to Io, I'm not going to be in your business right now. I'm your friend. I'm not coming for your title. I've got other things I'm going to focus on. And they do, Rhea is a central character, so see it playing out kind of that way is like a match to kind of show that Rhea is a real person who's really aligned with Io and less about a Saturday Night Main Event match. It could happen, and it would not be great.
Interesting. No, I think the problem already is that we don't really have we don't have a good scenario for Roxanne. To me, again, I would have done it totally different, but Roxanne would be my US champion on SmackDown. And
Yeah,
she would be the one who beats Zelina Vega. And she's the one who has feuds with other women, but she beats them, but to elevate everybody because she can always have that great match. I would have just started her in the mid card. Some people are going to go, oh my God, you're complaining that she's against Io and Rhea. And then look, if we're ranking WWE women based on popularity right now, the three most popular WWE women are, in no order, Rhea, Io, and Tiffany. That's who the three are. Maybe Alexa, but I don't know how much of that is we haven't seen her in a long time. Maybe it's
right.
Alexa. She's probably there anyway. But those are the three women: Rhea, Io, Tiffany. Roxanne has had a singles match with all of them in the last month and a half.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, people
I
could say, well, what do you want? You want her to fight BFAB, or you want her to fight, Zelina Vega? Like, she's fighting the top players.
Yeah, and I think the losses to the top players don't hurt. It's just the amount of pins that were unnecessary that they had her take. They also had her take a lot on her way out the door in NXT. I could see the Bayley Lyra thing or the Lyra Becky thing extending for a couple more weeks, and then either have one more match. I'm leaning towards Becky doesn't win this belt now, though. And I think Bayley gets involved, and Bayley and Becky feud without the belt, and then maybe Lyra and Roxanne have a feud for the belt.
I would
Which,
love that. I would
yeah,
love that because Bayley and Becky, as established legends, all timers, don't need belts. They don't need the belts. They can
they
have a
don't.
compelling feud with just the microphone and their in-ring work. They don't need the belt. A Lyra Roxanne feud would be tremendous for both parties. I think we would get some great matches. I think it would help elevate the title to have more prestige. And I think that Roxanne winning eventually would be great. Now, there is the picture that is, and we'll wrap up here. There's the picture floating around of Finn Balor trying to recruit Roxanne into the
Right.
Judgment Day. So it's clear cut to me Dom and Liv are going to be baby faces at some point. They get kicked out of Judgment Day, and so does Raquel, and in comes Julia and Roxanne with Finn, with JD, with Carlito. How would you feel about that quickly?
Um, I think Dom is doing some really good work, and I think him and Liv are naturally people want to cheer for them. Um, if that ends up being the new Judgment Day, then they would need to book Roxanne to win the IC title, and they would need to book Finn to win something because that
Yeah,
is a toothless, that currently that is a group of losers.
except for
And
Dom and Liv.
no, I'm saying if you take Liv and Dom out, Finn, Roxanne, JD, Carlito, and then Julia, everyone there is a loser except for Julia, and Julia hasn't won anything. She just hasn't lost anything. Um, you would need Roxanne and Finn and Julia to be winning for that to work, or else why are they on TV? Finn's been it's been pretty rough for Finn lately, but I think you could get to a place where um, that ends up being a decent enough faction.
So it's me. Yeah, I would agree with you that um, having that group, they need some wins because, to your point, they have really lost a lot of momentum and steam. I mean, Roxanne hasn't won in a while. I can't remember the last time Finn won a match,
Yeah.
honestly. I think he probably won a match to get into the four-way at Mania, but I don't know what other match he's won. Speaking of the new Judgment Day, Julia and Jordan Grace had a really, really good match on NXT TV this week. Little rough. I don't want to say rough in spots because if you watch Joshi wrestling or Japanese women's wrestling, those are spots that happen all the time. Maybe to an American audience, it looks a little skittish, but it did look like Julia got dropped on her head a couple of times. What did you think of the match?
No, it was a good match. It was physical. I trust that those women both knew what they were doing in there, and the American audience was a little shocked. The neck bumps and such. Um, but to your point, Joshi fans would tell you that Julia doesn't really get going until she's had a couple good neck bumps in a match anyway. So uh, I wasn't shocked by it, but yeah, the internet saw it as borderline unsafe. A couple of them for Julia, but her and Jordan had some really good chemistry. And again, I think that they went in there with um, physicality and roughness being the tone of the match, and Jordan's a very safe worker. I think her history is a strong one, and I think there's a lot of trust among those women. So I think that's what they were going for, was that type of um, physicality, because they're trying to showcase Julia really and get this audience to understand what she's all about.
Yeah, it was a really good match. Obviously they're going Jordan Grace against, Stephanie Bakur for, I think it's, what is it called? What is the pay-per-view called for NXT? The next one.
Got me
It's the
blank.
same week, it's the same weekend as Saturday night's main event. So they're doing four shows in a row in the same building, and ticket sales are really, really good for all four of them. I believe NXT is almost sold out. Saturday night's main event will be sold out because it's going to be John Cena's, like, I guess, final match there. Then they have Monday Night Raw, and then they have Tuesday SmackDown in the same building, or Tuesday NXT. But yeah, I'm excited for Grace against Stephanie Vacore. I think it'll be a hell
Stand
of
and
a match.
deliver.
Stand and deliver.
Or
I think
wait,
it'll be,
no,
yeah.
that was nope.
No, stand
Google
and deliver
Google.
is the
That
is
was
the
the WrestleMania one. Yeah, Google
yeah.
lied to me. It didn't give me the next one. It gave me the last one. Anyway, um, we'll get the right name on that next week so everyone can
Battleground.
battleground. That used to be a WWE pay-per-view.
Yep. It's actually the pay-per-view that is the only time you ever got the Shield main event.
Yeah.
It was the only time you ever got the three-way. So yeah, I'm excited for that match. NXT continues to deliver. They have a lot of compelling women's characters. I thought Lola Vice cut a hell of a promo this past week.
Yep.
Hopefully the direction is Lola Vice against Stephanie. I would love to see that match, but we'll see where it goes. But I'm excited for Grace and Vakur. I think it'll be a really good, hard-hitting, tremendous title match. And maybe Stephanie's time is coming to an end at NXT, and she's main roster ready. And as the ratings say, as I said last week, she's been main roster ready for a long time now. So we'll see where it
The
goes.
the freshest mega match that they could have for the women's title at SummerSlam would truly be Stephanie Io.
Yeah.
That's the only SummerSlam match that they had their match, but that's the one that feels like on a pay-per-views never happened, right? So
Yeah.
because if you're going to keep Rhea and or Bianca out of the title picture for SummerSlam, you need another name in there to make it worth them not being in there. So who knows? That's still a long way out. Before we wrap up, just an update, a non-update update. Speaking of Bianca, she did post a picture of her finger 2 days ago, and we are almost 3 weeks away from WrestleMania.
Mhm.
I'm no doctor, but that looks like the type of break that needs to have surgery at some point once the swelling goes down. So I don't know how long she's going to be off TV, but I mean, she had a full knot in the middle of her finger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that was the week after, I'd be like, oh man, hopefully that heals quickly. That looks like it'll take some medical intervention to get it fixed to what it was before. Not a doctor, but again, she even said that it was a recent, you know, update of what the finger looks like.
I remember 2009 or 2008. I know Kobe broke his finger and played with it, but he taped the two fingers together the whole season. But that finger, Bianca's finger, looked 10 times worse than any finger I saw of Kobe's that was broken. Like, that looked really bad. Like,
Yeah.
you can't even get a splint around it. So yeah, Bianca, wishing you the best. Know you'll come back better than ever. But yeah, that's kind of our show this week. We covered a lot of topics, and we look forward to the direction of the AEW women. Owen Hart tournament is in 2 weeks. Saturday nights. Funny enough, Saturday nights. No, sorry. NXT Battleground and the Owen Hart tournament are on the exact same night.
Yep.
So big night for women's wrestling on that night. And in general, we'll see what happens with this Monday Night Raw Io, Rhea versus Roxanne and Julia tag match. I hope they get a lot of time. I hope they get to tell a story. And I hope we get a really good match. So until next week, see you guys then.
Thanks, everyone.